how should we be looking at the role of AI in the business? I feel like we covered this a little bit before, but like installing AI into your business, it sounds to me like it is find the repeated tasks, the low value. I mean, they might have high value, but ultimately to pay somebody to do it, there's probably a better use of what you could be paying that person to do for you.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it feels like what you're saying, and if it's what you're saying, I would have to agree with it, is that the role of AI is to basically allow the human time to be spent on more valuable things.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. And there are I think AI will bring a lot of us together. You know, the dark possible reality is, have you watched Wall-E? Where all
yes, yeah, no,
the
of course.
overweight people in the chairs where everything's done for them, and there's sloths in their chairs where everything's done for them, and they live in a dystopian society that ultimately ended. Right? I think that, or Terminator, right? That's the
Sure.
the other dark potential reality. But right now, where we're at, 2023, or depending on when you're listening to this, and sorry to date the podcast, but there are a lot of fun use cases for AI, and there are a lot of practical use cases for AI. There's a great one, supermeme.ai, which creates memes for you using AI, which is a fun use case. There's autodraw.io, which I believe is a Google tool that you can just draw like what symbolizes a cat, and it'll turn it into a much more robust app. Or a cat. There are great image generators now. DALL-E 2 is fantastic. Runway ML, I think, is arguably better than DALL-E at this point, where just entering in really specific prompts will generate incredible, very high detail oriented pictures for you. And they're getting into the video creation space as well, where there's tools that are generating augmented reality setups where you can put a visor on and it creates a 3-dimensional world, or video scenes are being created now. And it's all progressing so quickly that it's borderline overwhelming of how fast that this stuff is exponentially growing, and how many tools are coming out. But I really think it's so important to just draw it back in and focus on what will bring you the most value. I mean, I use AI tactfully every day, from some of the tools that I mentioned. Otter, I'm a little biased, but I use Syllabi every day. I really built it as a tool that would help me first, and we're like, all right, let's just roll it out to everybody.
Those are some of the best things. Like, you have the use case built in. Like, why not make your superpower available for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it originally came from the idea of like, what was the most tedious thing in my job, and it was to develop content strategies for new clients that would take me hours to do all of that. And so I'm like, well, with AI and a lot of these tools, like we can do this very quickly, right? So that's where the original idea started with, as a tool to just save me countless hours to develop a content strategy, and then we rolled it out to our SOPs for a video campaign. And I don't know if that specifically answered your questions, but everything from fun to tactical, it's how you want to use it as an individual person.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think that definitely covers some more of this stuff. And I'm just asking some of these questions and covering the same thing in a couple different ways, because I think folks need to see something that speaks to their pain point, right? And I think revolutionizing AI with a bunch of different use cases is great, but maybe that's not me. Like, maybe I'm somebody that doesn't have a lot of meetings and I'm good at my social media. Why would I need AI? But now we're talking about like other things that it might work. And I think something that also goes into sort of the pitfalls is, we might have a lot of different tools. I'm curious to know how you evaluate whether or not the AI is actually helping. Like, what do you do to go in and say, yeah, I could do all of this in AI, but ultimately I'm, 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Do I even need it? Like, where is that like line where you're saying this tool that I'm trying is ultimately working out versus it's not really working for me? Because I think it's really easy for somebody to just adopt, well, we paid money for this thing, we're going to bake it in.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think one of the biggest issues I've seen over the last few years is people buying 75 tools to do 8 jobs. And then your tech stack is 1,000 things that are all $12 a month. And before you know it, you have no idea what the consumer experience is. You have no idea the standard operating procedures for your business. And I see a really big trend of, like, I had a conversation with Jimmy Kim from Sendling. And like what they're doing is taking, you know, a dozen options and putting into one box that just makes it simple for you to do 95% of the work, but probably 100% of the stuff you actually need.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, like, how do you know if your AI is helping, or yeah, how are you, what would you say to somebody, like, what do they need to know when it comes to evaluating the actual efficacy of some of the investments that they're making?
So I want to start with I guess a philosophy that I've learned. One of the best lessons I learned as a business owner and entrepreneur is the value of my time, and where is that best spent. And you know, a quick analogy here is it's better to outsource your suck for less than you value your time at, so that you can focus more on doing what you are passionate about, what you're best at what your creative outlet is, etc. So a couple examples of this: I could mow my lawn and save that money, but it also takes me an hour or 2 hours to mow the front and back of my lawn. I could clean my house, which is 3 stories, or I could hire a maid to do that. And so that gives me hours of my time back that I can focus on creating more content, doing more great interview podcasts like this that I'm passionate about, doing more research to level up myself and my knowledge even further. These are things that give me a direct ROI. And so I take that back to AI, and when I'm testing a tool, you know, I take it back to, like, what are the tedious things that I do on a daily basis that I would either want to hire somebody to take off of my plate, or have some sort of software or AI do for me, so that I can free up more of my time and focus on doing what I love and doing what I'm best at. And so that's how I kind of evaluate a tool. And so many of these tools have free trials now. It's not a big deal to, like, try them out and test them for, you know, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, whatever their free trial period is, right? And see if it actually makes sense for you. And there's plenty of AI tools out there that I have tested. The value prop seems great, but in reality, it just didn't quite, like, justify paying for it, or it wasn't that big of an advancement. So I either just continue to do it myself because it's not that big of a deal, or try and find a new tool to replace it. So that's kind of where my mind goes, both in just in business life, entrepreneurship in general, but tactfully with AI as well.
No, I think that's really interesting, because what I heard really was 2 things. One is one that the way I internalized it. So I'll talk about that first. Was, you know, the AI might be doing the job, but it's not really working for you. For instance, I have found use cases for Chat Sonic versus Chat GPT.
Sure.
Where, and for those that aren't aware, Chat Sonic is like a really great writer. It's a phenomenal text thing, but it's also, it limits, like, I think you get 25 things a day for free, and then past that you have to pay something along those lines, which is their free version is a daily use case. And I have once set a timer that let me know it was 25 hours since the last time I used it, so I could bang out things like on a week. And It was great. Like, I absolutely used it. And I think it's more robust in that it's specialized, but ultimately that specialization, the advantage there wasn't as necessary ultimately. And I moved away from that for that use case.
Well, just real quick, Chat Sonic's also connected to the internet, I believe, as ChatGPT is not, correct?
Correct. And that was part of the thing where I was using it was,
Yeah.
I was making some educational stuff with somebody that was making a lot of contemporary references. And so the ability to take some of their written and video stuff and pull direct like a week ago, a day ago, last month versus the internet of 2021, which is I think
Right.
the chat GPT 3 at the time was referencing, and the ability to have that back and forth was vital. And why I ended up using it. And also some of the language being more specific, and that it's got some of the prompts, and as like a professor level doing this type of, you can be, it does some of the prompt work for you in the options. But absolutely. And I thought that was great, but ultimately what I found was I got something that where the output wasn't better functionally for anybody besides me.
Right.
Than the chat GPT side was, but using any of those chats was more effective than getting the person I was working with to do the work, because they had handed me a slew of information. And what I realized was I need a little bit of accompanying text. I need to put this stuff into context, and going back to them and asking them to do it was going to take 4 weeks or something, right? Like, because they're also busy. There's probably 20 minutes of work that they needed to do 5 times, but they're a person. She was a mom with a husband and like businesses and stuff, like didn't have the time. So there it worked really well. But I think the other thing that I heard out of this was one of, I think, the most powerful things that I don't hear enough people talking about. And the way I internalized it was buying back your time. And one of the things that I'm seeing so many of these, I see it really, really well done. It's funny, there's like this generation gap where I feel like folks that are, I was born in 84, so the folks that are a little bit older than me are phenomenal at hiring out to fill, hiring a person to do a job so they don't have to. And then I found that like anybody born after 95, 2000 is phenomenal at figuring out how to do the same thing with AI. And I'm sort of in this like gap where like I'm willing to do it myself because I'm hip enough to be able to, but I don't know. It's just sort of my view of it all. But I think buying back time is so tremendously valuable.
I get a lot of comments on my videos because I share like useful AI websites, right? And so many people all around the world are like, but is it free? It's not free. I only want free. And it's like, gosh, you have to, if you want to be successful, you have to change your mindset. Not everything's worth paying for, of course, right? But time is the most important thing that we have. It in our lives. It's the most important thing because it's set. There's only a limited amount of time that we have. And so if I can buy back some of that time, that I can, tie it back into what you were saying earlier, to spend more time with my loved ones, to be able to travel more, to see more, where I'm not caught, doing a grindy 12-hour workday. If I can free up more of my time and let these tools do a lot of the grunt work for me that was taking up so much of my time, I will gladly pay that small subscription cost on a monthly basis to save me hours and hours. And it's such a hard mindset shift because, that just comes from the, like even an older generation, right? That's non-wealthy. It comes from saving versus spending, right? And it's scarcity. It's a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. Right. And that scarcity mindset is such a trap of like, I can save this money, right, for later on in life. But later on in life is never guaranteed. Right. Just some thoughts there.
No, I love it. And let me put like, while you were saying that, because I love the time with the family. And I think that that's so important, especially me and my wife are trying to build a family. And, part of me is like, how do I get as much out of the day to day so I can spend more and more time doing that stuff that's important? One of the investments that I made, and I have nothing to do with them, but just a soft plug for Repurpose.io. Big fan of Repurpose.
Love it. Yep.
And I legitimately would spend, let's say on average, an hour a day to take my short form content. And what I was doing was even using a tool like Hubler, which I love. But it took me an hour a day to go through all of my channels and all the business and extract things out to schedule out to each place because I was doing it manually. And
Yeah.
to be fair, I've got, 3 different networks of social channels. Each one's on like 4 to 6 different platforms. Doing the busy work took at least an hour a day. And it was also human labor. So if I did A quality work, I'm making mistakes 3 to 5% of the time. Okay.
Mhm.
That tool, I think I'm paying less than $30 a month.
Yep.
And so it basically is I'm willing to pay $1 an hour to spend time with my family in a way where I know the work is also getting done better than I can do it. And for me, when I put that real world thing, like how much would I spend in money to buy an hour with my family? And if you say it's less than $1, I don't know that I'm in a place where I can turn that down. And to be fair, because it's doing the work better than me, odds are what I earn from putting things out there just organically, I probably make money on that dollar an hour.
Absolutely.
More than what I could do for myself. So let me ask you this, like, as somebody that I would say probably has their finger on the pulse a bit more than other folks, where do you see